Hey, so good morning, everyone. Today I have Shawn with me, who is acting as the general manager of Nissan Japan. Shawn, thank you very much for your time today. It's an honor for me to, have you in my podcast, and I'd like to have a very, wonderful discussion with you today.
Thank you. And I just want to caution, yeah, I'm a general manager at Nissan, and I look after, at a global clip, I look after a very specific function.
What do you think the future of automobile and autonomous driving?
Yeah, that's an amazingly good question. I think it's very timely.
Hmm.
In this context, I'm going to give you my personal views, not necessarily corporate views, right? Because I think it's best I just keep my personal views out there. Um, I think that automobiles, we're at an inflection point. I really believe in the OEM market,
Hmm.
and I mean that in terms of electrification as well as autonomous driving, which and I think those are very different concepts, and they're very have massively different impacts in terms of transformation. When you look at the electrification, really is the movement of internal combustion engines or ICE vehicles to EV or electric
Hmm.
vehicle. And I think in that space, it's really coming down to the cost of the vehicle, the incentives for governments to make it so the cost point of the EV is on parity or roughly the same cost structure as say you would get with a normal ICE vehicle. And that
Okay.
is really driving a lot of the sales of that. I think that the other areas that you have that are going to really impact that are really nation states and their regulations. So you have some nation states or groups like the EU or China, which have really fixed mandates that on date X you can't sell any more ICE vehicles. Right, so that's a really hard clip. And if you're a global OEM, what that means is you really are going to have to align your investment strategies, your product strategies, and product life cycles can be, 5, 7, 10 years in the making. You got to align all of that to the EV because vehicle programs can cost you $3 billion, $4 billion, and take, as I said, huge amounts of time. Um, and so you're going to have to ensure that your vehicles that you output you can hit the volume that drives the cost structure, your economies of scale low enough that can then keep the cost structure on pair with the ICE vehicles, which is a huge dynamic. And I see a lot of people talking back and forth about, different aspects. Is it a battery versus a fuel cell? Stuff like that. And I think honestly, those are trivial questions. I think that without doubt, it's going to be EV, and without doubt, it's going to happen. Uh, and I think that the nation states are going to begin pushing harder and harder to do that. And I think that customer choice will also drive a lot of that as well. People are going to begin when the cost structure becomes the same. People will select products that make them feel good, right? I feel
Yeah.
good. I'm not impacting the environment, so I'm going to start, and that'll drive further investment and further expedite that cycle. And
Hmm.
that's on the electrification piece. That said, markets are very different. So you have to really figure all of that out in the context of very different global markets. Now, when I step back, I think in a recent interview with Auto News, I think Herbert Diess, who's the chairman of Volkswagen, no, he's a chairman of the board of Volkswagen Group, and he indicated that he thought that autonomous driving is going to be even more transformative than the electrification in the industry. And I really began thinking about that. And what I think he's referring to is that that's not just a technology thing. That's like the whole driving experience is going to change. The in-car, the in-vehicle experience will change. What you need in the car, how do you engage with your customers in the car? That all of that will change huge. And that has massive implications in terms of the vehicles that you produce. It also has a lot to do with the technology that you put on those cars. I think recently I heard somebody refer to connected cars as a data center on wheels, and I just think that's like a brilliant way to think about them. But in autonomous driving, really to be able to produce that at scale, like millions of units, you can't be putting a data center in every unit. Just think about the sustainability impact, a lot of these other impacts you'd have, and the cost structure would be too high. So you really have to start moving that processing off the vehicle as well. So currently, you would think about 80% of the 80% of processing, roughly 80% of the processing on a vehicle is actually done on the car today. And about 20% maybe you throw up into the cloud. And generally that's done asynchronously. You got to flip it. You got to be doing 20% on the car. That could be asynchronously. You got to have 80% in the cloud. That's got to be real time, because if it's not real time, can't handle glitches, can't handle defects, latency, you're talking about real material impact, right? People
Yeah,
getting in
yeah.
accidents and potentially fatalities, which God forbid that would happen. I think that'd be very unfortunate. So the amount of investment, the types of technology, the opportunities for services and stuff that you're going to be able to provide through those autonomous vehicles is what I think Herbert was referring to. It's just an unfathomable world of mobility that will open up. And I think that opening up that also then begins to transform the business models for the OEMs, right? When you think through that, you would say, and I remember, as we talked about earlier, when I joined automotive industry 2 years ago, I remember a thought I had, and I remember it distinctly because I reflect on this probably once every quarter. I said, I believe someday OEMs will simply give the cars away, because the revenue streams that they can generate
See.
outside of the sale of the vehicle will be disproportionately greater. And just 2 days ago, I saw something that reaffirmed my belief that that is absolutely going to happen. Tesla announced that their full service driving, so FSD, they'll offer it as a monthly service. You pay $199 a month, instead of the $10,000 up front. So essentially, they're saying, look, you pay as you go, you pay more than 4 years, then actually Tesla's going to make more money on the product, right? So that's where you're starting to see. They make huge amounts on the carbon credits that they sell. Now, carbon credits are not going to go into in perpetuity. It won't last forever, right? Because it can't last forever. But that's fun. But then you talk about in-vehicle, services, connections, payments, all these different things, selling the data, selling services to the customer based on the data that you have on the customer, selling data on all your vehicles to third parties and aggregate those revenue streams, or even stuff like you saw Tesla selling insurance based on the data that they had on the vehicle and stuff, so they can better price it and do all these great things in terms of financial services. And unequivocally, I reaffirm my belief that someday people will simply give away the car because it's just cheaper to do that. And so I look at the future of the electrification of the automobile. I look at the impact of autonomous driving, as we were talking about the technology, but not only just that, the space and stuff. It's going to be monster, and it's very exciting.
Just want to personally visualize the timing, like when we can, move into the autonomous driving era.
Really good question. I mean, if you take a look at the Virgin Galactic, right? I mean, Branson, they bought that technology, what, 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, roughly 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And only now, after 20 years of testing, innovating, going through improvement cycles, is it now up to class where you can do commercial space tourism, right? Essentially. You look at Jeff Bezos, which actually I haven't checked the news today to see if he was able to launch yesterday, but assuming he did, there's another one, right? And that's taken numbers of years to get there. So yes, these technologies aren't going to be like overnight. And as I said, the task at hand to be able to put that type of capability on those vehicles at zero defect, zero latency, zero, casualty rate, stuff like that is not a small task, and it's not going to be inexpensive, and it's not that companies haven't tried and failed. Companies have tried, companies have failed. The amount that's been invested to date is astronomical, The amount
Mhm.
that will be required will be astronomical. And the skill sets that will need to be to deliver that, some are still being built, right? And that's my personal belief. But I think that, yes, you're looking at, I'd be loath to put out a time range, but it's definitely in my mind, true autonomous driving, like
Mhm.
thinking back to when we were kids watching Knight Rider and Michael Knight and the Kit Car, right?
Yeah,
Something like that. That's, 5, 10, maybe longer out there.
I
I
see.
can't wait because it's
Yeah.
exciting, but it's definitely not within the next year or so.
Got it. So one more thing, Sean, to dig in. So you mentioned that the technology disruption will take some time, and we all need to work really hard to achieve those autonomous driving, to get into the autonomous driving era. So what do you think about the future of work? Because we now see people are working remotely, people are working by themselves, but having this kind of disruption needs a teamwork, right? Needs to go into the field, needs to test the product, especially in manufacturing. So how do you think the future of work will impact?
Great question. And the honest answer on that one is I truly believe it's going to depend on depend on the industry, depend on the country one's based in, depend on the department, the culture of the company. I mean, what you see companies like Deloitte, I think Deloitte Australia, recently announced people don't have to go back into the office, right?
Hmm.
Interesting because that's a consultancy base basically, but it's also a knowledge based work too.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you see some things coming out of Wall Street in the U.S., right, where you see a lot of big banks are saying, you know what, get back into the office, or you may not have a job. At least that's what it appears when I read the newspaper, right? And there's a very people to people business, very much about knowledge based workers, but a very different approach. I don't think there's a one size fits all.
Exactly.
And I think that you're right. You highlighted, you've got a test. Well, testing by default means someone's going to go somewhere and get in potentially initially get into a car or put a test dummy in the car and crash it into the wall, record the crash, record the speed, record all the data you get on that, run that through your computers and algorithms to figure out all the safety data you need from it and figure out what you need to do with your car. People are going to go somewhere to do that. But do engineers and people always need to go somewhere and do something? No. So I think that it'll also then come down to what are you trying to achieve with the job you're doing for that day?
Okay.
So things that I think that are like very intimate, people to people, personal issues, intercompany issues, dealing with critical stakeholders. Those are like really intimate things where I think, face to face is going to be important. Thing where you know, tight collaboration, real time collaboration, tend to lend themselves more to face to face. Things that are not that way, so meetings, meeting with my team in different parts of the world doesn't mean I need to be there. Right?
Yeah.
It does, I can much more efficient for me not to be there. Collaboration tool sets, they're becoming very robust, right? People
Hmm.
being able to collaborate real time around the world. I've seen VR collaboration studios where people can jump into a VR world together and view an automobile, like pointing out, see the steering wheel, and they're all, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
okay. Okay. And or going under the car, opening the engine, saying, "See the parts. This is how we forecast them. What do you think?" And people are like, "Yeah, yeah, cool." Which is showing you again in that context with Oculus glasses and stuff like that. You know what? For some things, you don't really need to be with people. You can create that space. You don't actually have to do that. So I go back to the piece. One size will not fit all.
But what qualities do you currently look after the pandemic on while hiring new talents in your team or across your business?
Good question. Hmm. I think I look for proactive people that are really good communicators. I think people need to be flexible in terms of the roles they can do and the roles that they can play within a team, because you don't always have to play the same role on different teams. If you're a leader on one team, doesn't mean you have to be leader on all teams, and you can equally contribute. So I think that flexibility in terms of what role you play is really important. I think people that are self-motivated and people that have really solid support networks, right? I think that's really important. I don't need a top performer. I need the person that's the most trusted performer, because that'll deliver every day.
Right. And how do you retain them? Because now, like due to the lockdown, it's very tough, right, for companies to bring new talents from overseas. So everyone is trying to headhunt from others. So what's the secret sauce?
Secret sauce, yeah. Eh, I think I always when I do that, I always reflect on one of my mentors when I was starting out, and he said, Shawn, people follow people and people leave people. So I believe the largest component of attracting and retaining talent is actually what the opportunity is. How exciting is it? How socially valuable is it? How rewarding is it to the person? Um, and then the perceived value or the perceived support level that the manager will give that person in ensuring that they'll be successful. And I think as long as an organization is good at that to start with and continues to refresh that for their talent, that they will continue to attract and retain, top talent, even in challenging times. And I think if you look at some of our leading companies out there, you can pick, Google and others like that. They're really challenging to get in there, but they give really challenging opportunities to people.
Okay.
Challenging work, great support. It's fun, very rewarding socially. People standing for social values and stuff like that. Google, you look at their GCP, their cloud offering, right? 100% sustainable energy. That's their
Wow.
goal. That's what they're doing, right? And so you like their social value. You feel that self-realization in what you're doing, and I think that that's massively important
I
in
see.
today's world.
I think this part not many people really touch, like the social value. Of course, the challenging work, like Socrates said, right? An unexamined life is not worth living. So of course we need to have a lot of challenges, but on the other hand, the social value, the sustainable issues, if we can also touch, maybe that will really help companies to retain their talents, I think.
There was an interesting study. I honestly couldn't remember which one it was. I've read a number of them, but it talked about after comp. Like, so if you comp people to a certain level, beyond that, it isn't a comp. In fact, giving people too much compensation tends to make them do bad things,
Okay.
right? Like try to twist their integrity and starts to play around with the results to get more money. But after, if you can meet that level, that basic, what's fair, then people then begin to do what's the self-realization. So why do I know some country managers in financial services, they run billion-dollar businesses. They're learning how to play the saxophone. They want to learn how to play music, paint, do art. Why? They're not going to be a professional painter. They do it for self-actualization.
I see.
So being able to create something that says, look, this is sustainable, this is great.
Like one key takeaway from for our audience, which they can absorb from our this episode, which we touched. Maybe if there's something you would like to tell us, and.
Wow. Oh, one. I think, digital transformation in the automotive industry today, it's driven by engineering and technology and the vehicle electrification and autonomous driving. And these are just profound impacts on our environment, not to mention on our personal lives. I think that the folks that can harness the skills required to deliver this future, people that can work a few miracle months living on Starbucks and 24-hour coding and thinking, whether it's in engineering, technology design, marketing, whatever. There's amazing opportunities with emerging business models and industries. And I think that it's just so exciting to be a part of this, and I can't wait to see, in my sincere hope, that all of the people who would watch this can't wait to see how this transformation impacts their lives and makes mobility fun, enjoyable, an experience worth doing. And that to me that's where it's at.
I see. Great. So yeah, I think we had an amazing podcast today. I hope the audience will be also listening this will really enjoy and take away a few great things. And thank you, Sean, for your time today. It was really amazing. I mean, I'm really like really had a great time.